Okay, so from last week we looked at the Auf BAU principle. I thought I'd quickly run through it again with you. Now the Auf BAU principle, it shows us how electrons are arranged in atoms. It shows how electrons are built up in atoms. So like at GCSE, electrons will go into shell 1 first, then shell 2, then shell 3, then shell 4. However, when we get to A level, we talk about the Auf BAU principle, and it's a little bit more detail of what happens to the electrons when they go into shells. So when they go into shell 1, they go into subshell S. And inside subshell S, there is an area called an orbital. It's called an s orbital, and it can accommodate 2 electrons. So in shell 1, you have 2 electrons. That is exactly the same as at GCSE. But when we get to shell 2, you can see shell 2 is actually bigger. It's a bigger area around the nucleus. Shell 2 has got an S subshell, and it's also got a P subshell. An S subshell has got an S orbital. S orbital has 2 electrons. However, when we get to a P subshell has 3 P orbitals. Now we have to remember that each orbital can contain 2 electrons. So in total, a P subshell can accommodate 6 electrons. There's Px, Py and Pz, and each Px, Py, Pz can have 2 electrons each. So that's where the 8 comes from at GCSE. So we've now already got 2 from GCSE, 8, but we've just put it into more detail. Then we move on to shell 3. Shell 3 can accommodate an S, a P, and also a D subshell. In a D subshell there are 5 orbitals. But what we discussed at the end of the last session was that 4s and 3d are very similar in energy, and the electrons will actually go into 4s first before they go into 3d. So the electronic configuration for calcium using Auf BAU principle is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6, 4s2. Now if I had a periodic table here, I'd be able to show you how you can work out calcium 4s2, because the S block are the first 2 columns in the periodic table, and if you go down 4 periods in a long 2, you get calcium, and that's where the 4s2 comes from. So it kind of links together with the periodic table. Okay, so firstly we need to know the Auf BAU principle, and secondly we need to know something called Hund's rule of maximum multiplicity. So I'll have a quick chat about that now in a minute.